Hello, and welcome to the Managing Transportation Costs with D365 Finance and Supply Chain and RSM's ProShip Shipping Service Integration webinar. My name is Lacey Bonbon. I will be your moderator today. If you experience technical difficulties or difficulties with polling, reach out by using the chat box feature located in the bottom right of your Microsoft Teams window. We also encourage you to use the chat feature to ask content-related questions of the presenters. This webinar will be recorded and posted on the RSM Technology blog after completion. Your presence and participation may be captured on this recording. Please reach out to caleb.green@rsmus.com with any questions or concerns. At this time, I would like to introduce Nick Beerbrot, who will be one of your presenters for today.
Thank you, Lacey. So like Lacey said, we're going to go over managing transportation costs, specifically around outbound transportation and how to best manage the creation of those loads and the costs for them. So just a quick introduce myself, Nick Beerbrot. I am a director here at RSM with a focus on our industrial and manufacturing practice. I primarily work within our D365 space within finance, the finance and supply chain application. Our other presenter today will be Connor Locker, who is a supervisor within our Dynamics 365 delivery practice. Connor has a lot of experience implementing transportation and warehousing and manufacturing, including 3PLs and third-party solutions for within D365. So just kind of what we're going to go over today. We're going to go over a quick inbound scenario. We're going to go over 3 outbound scenarios and what those can look like. What the D365 transportation management and ProShip solutions can do. Gaps that those solutions have with some potential solutions, and then we'll go through a quick ProShip execution and some questions and answers. So just real quick first, our inbound scenario is going to be primarily covered by the new landed cost module within D365. So as I mentioned earlier, we're not going to focus too much on this inbound scenario at this point, but landed cost is a new module within Dynamics 365, and it greatly enhances Dynamics when I am trying to import in material from overseas or have, say, multi-leg ship loads that are coming in. It specifically only works with inbound, so bringing in purchase orders or bringing in transfer orders. And it's going to allow us to go through and take ownership at different points in ports. So if I'm taking ownership of something in China versus taking ownership of something when it hits the US border, or taking ownership of it when it actually hits our facilities, that's all configurable. I can also go through and accrue and allocate all my different types of landed costs, whether they're brokerage costs, their actual shipping costs, whatever costs that I'm accruing on that voyage or shipment. I can go in and make sure I'm accruing that and then applying the actuals to it after the fact. So again, that's something that was a gap for a long time within Dynamics. And has recently become a new module that allows us to really capture those costs around the inbound. So next we're going to go through, and we're just going to kind of go through the different outbound scenarios that we have here and that we're going to cover today. This is they're going to be the bulk of our conversation, and we're going to go through 3 different scenarios and the RSM recommendations around how you would handle each of those scenarios, and then just some caveats around that. So our first scenario is really concentrated on if you are doing a lot of LTL shipments or business to consumer, where it's a lot of courier or small package parcel shipment, is a lot of time there you need an integration to Dynamics 360. You need an integration from Dynamics 365 to a FedEx or UPS or some other courier to do that. From there, I also have advanced labeling requirements. So every single one of those boxes needs to be labeled. If it's going international, I need to make sure that I have all my customs documentation in place. And that we're not, as the shipper, we are not generally saying what route stuff is going to go on, right? That's going to be handled by either FedEx, UPS, USPS, whoever, DHL, whoever that courier is. So when you have these types of requirements, the RSM recommendation is going to be to use, there's a service called ProShip that RSM has built an integration accelerator to. So we'll go into a little bit more what ProShip is, but in kind of in short terms, it's going to be an integration out to those different couriers where you're only doing one integration and then ProShip has done the rest of them for you. So our second scenario that we're going to speak to today is going to be if I'm primarily business to business focused. A lot of the times this is going to be I'm doing full truckload or / truckload shipments, and it's a very simple distribution framework where, hey, we ship something from our facility, whether that be a warehouse or a manufacturing facility, and it's going to go and it's going to drop off at a single destination. So that could be going to a customer, that could be going to another warehouse. Those are the primary sweet spots there. But again, it's going to be primarily truckload situations that this works well in. Or again, if I'm making multiple orders of those trucks, or maybe there's one order that takes a full truckload. With that, I also require being able to communicate an advanced ship notice or ASN, and be able to do wave labeling where I am still labeling each one of those boxes or pallets that are going and going onto that truck. For this scenario, again, our recommendation is going to be that the transportation management system within Dynamics 365 Finance and Supply Chain should suit your needs. There can be some manual setup here in terms of how complex we need to make our routings and all of that. But we can go through and we should be able to build all of our loads and ship them out appropriately in a full truckload scenario. The last scenario that we're going to discuss is scenario 3. It's going to be a hybrid of those first two scenarios. So that's going to be, I'm doing business to business, so I'm going to do full truckloads, maybe some LTL stuff in there. Then I'm also maybe doing some B2C situations, so business to consumer. That's going to be where, again, that distribution framework is going to be vast. Maybe I have a lot of shipment volume. Some of my things are going to go by partial shipment out to couriers using FedEx, UPS, whatever. Maybe I have some truckload that is going to, I'm using somebody like a Schneider National or somebody that is actually brokering my truckload shipment or my LTL shipments, and I need integration into those. Or I'm also building routes and loads that have these multi-stops, right? So I'm going through and dropping off and possibly picking up along the way of different things, especially if I'm building my own fleets here. So I have maybe 10 different customers that I'm going to build a load on, and I want to make sure I build that full route there for those multiple stops. Again, this will also require generally those advanced ASNs where we are going to be sending those to the appropriate customer with all of the shipping information and that wave labeling that we spoke about. The best solution for this is generally going to be, we can either use D365 TMS. The downside to using the full TMS solution for this scenario is it can require a lot of initial manual setup and upkeep in terms of doing all of the rate shopping, doing the maintaining those routes. So what we generally do in this scenario is we explore third-party solutions. These third-party solutions could be something like BlueJay, which we have worked with commonly, that integrate right into Dynamics 365 and allow us to do those rate shopping scenarios. It allows us it maintains the routes and just makes it a better user interface and better communication out to those different carriers, whether they be truckload carriers or LTL carriers and couriers. The other piece here is that maybe we're stuck somewhere in the middle, right? And we don't have a huge volume of things, but we need to be able to do stuff like our multi-stop routing or or other functionality that's not quite in the base system. RSM does have an accelerator, which is intellectual property that RSM has built. That is a starting point for our clients that need kind of this, what we're calling advanced load building. That extends the D365 base setup and allows us to do stuff like that multi-stop routing and a number of other functionality that we'll get into here in a little bit. So the next thing I'm going to go into is just talk through ProShip just a little bit. So what is ProShip? ProShip is a service, like I mentioned earlier, it's a third-party platform that does all of the integrations to those common carriers that you are doing partial shipments, partial shipments or LTL type shipments. That's going to be your FedEx, your UPS, your USPS, your DHL. There's about 80 carriers that ProShip has integrations to. So while it's not a lot of them, it covers all of the major ones and will be a huge percentage of your LTL shipments for most of our clients. Some of the key features that this allows then is that you're not maintaining those APIs and the integrations to each of those different services. So ProShip itself is maintaining those integrations. So as stuff changes, ProShip goes through and changes it. As they add support for new carriers, those get automatically added into your environment. So it makes your maintenance a lot less. It goes through and it does rate shopping, right? So it has the rate engines built into it already, and you just have to put in what your carrier information is to that ProShip service, and it's going to bring back your rate schedule and do an effective rate shopping to say, hey, you should use FedEx, or you should use USPS, or you should use UPS for this specific shipment. The flexible label creation. So in D365, just printing labels by itself can be fairly rigid. This allows for making different types of labels for different types of orders a lot easier, and just being able to be on the fly more flexible with everything going out, whether those are labels or international documentation. And that gets to that last point of the shipping compliance. Shipping compliance, again, hey, I am doing international shipments, so I have customs shipments that are going out. I'm going through and I'm doing, I need broker information. I have all of these documents that I need to make sure that whether that's the bill of lading or anything else, that ProShip has all of these reports built out. And sometimes it takes slight modifications, but it's a big starting point over what's in D365 out of the box. So that's the ProShip service. So then, like I said, it's just a service, right? We still have to hook it into Dynamics 365. So one of the things that RSM has built out is a ProShip integration accelerator. So again, we're calling it an accelerator. It is a full integration that works, but every single client is going to be slightly different in how they need to handle their communication with their couriers and those LTL carriers. So that's where there may be some small changes that need to be, and that's why we call it an accelerator, not just a full-on third-party solution. So again, what this does is it's bringing in to D365 those labeling requirements. So if you see here on the screen, you see that, hey, it's showing that FedEx label and generating that and printing it right to your printers in your facility. We're generating shipment manifests. We're doing the shipment confirmations that we can see here on the screen, just saying, hey, making sure, hey, this is where it's going, this is what I'm going to use. If there is any NAFTA or that international documentation I was talking about. And it also will have scale integration, right? So that's another key aspect when we're doing these LTL shipments, is that every single shipment is going to have a different weight. I need to make sure I'm communicating that weight for that effective rate shopping. So, hey, if something is 23 pounds, I need to make sure that I'm telling FedEx that it's 23 pounds. So they're printing the label properly. All of my shipment confirmations, my manifests are correct, and that they're giving me the proper rate for that shipment. So again, all of that then configures and ties directly into all of the modes of delivery within Dynamics 365. So I'm going to set up those modes per shipment provider, so we have all the necessary tie-ins. So you can do rate shopping, or you can say, no, this has to go FedEx for this specific customer. So the next thing I'm just going to briefly talk through is just kind of what D365 transportation management can do and allows you to do. Again, going back to those earlier scenarios, that ProShip is really going to be for those LTL shipments and works really well with those courier carriers of UPS, FedEx, USPS. Transportation management is going to be more. It's going to be more full truckload type shipments that I want to plan out, right? So transportation management in D365, or TMS for short, is going to allow us to use either carrier vendors, right? So that's going to be, again, it could be somebody like a Schneider National or a Ruan or somebody else. It could also be that, hey, it's a company-owned fleet. And again, I'm going to tie those into my modes of delivery. It's going to allow me to arrange and plan that transportation of both inbound loads and outbound loads from vendors with set transportation rates. So the thing here is I can still set up all of my different rates in D365 for transportation management. The key that from an out-of-the-box perspective is, hey, there's no direct integration into any of those carriers, right? So whether that's UPS, USPS, FedEx, or whether that's a Ruan, Schneider National, or one of the other big truckload carriers, is that I'm not bringing back the rates from anybody automatically. There's no integration. So I have to either manually maintain those rates or put in kind of some default rates just for some like accrued cost. I can also go through and again, plan and generate those outbound loads. And then I'm going to assign a configured route and rate for costing purposes. So I'm going to say that, hey, this truck is going to go from Kansas City, Missouri to Modesto, California, and I'm going to have a specific rate assigned to that route, and whether that's based on mileage or mileage, transit time, or zones, right? So you can kind of see it's a little small there, that what I can define my those rates based off of. It's whether maybe it's a per mileage rate, maybe it's based off the transit time that we're calculating that we have on that route, or it's based off just what zone where we're shipping something, right? So, hey, I'm taking something from the Midwest to the West, that's one rate versus going from the Midwest to, say, the Southwest. From here, once I go through and I actually plan that out and ship it, I can then go through and take freight bills and match them against those loads that I've created. So as I get those vendor freight bills in, I can go in and I can match those up to the original separate from the original purchase order and sales order. So they're not necessarily directly tied in to the purchase order. I'm saying, hey, these 6 purchase orders were on this load, and I need to match this one freight bill to this to those purchase orders to go back and assign the cost, right? So we're getting a little bit more of a full landed cost in there with TMS than what I would just by putting a freight charge directly on the sales order and then trying to go back and match everything up manually after the fact. The other piece here is from a planning strategy, is that by default, Dynamics is going to go based off of a volume-based load transportation strategy. So it's going to go through and try to plan based off of your different truck sizes. So, hey, I have a 40-foot truck, I have a 55-foot truck or trailer. It's going to go and try to containerize everything and load everything in there based off of the volumetric dimensions and weights that you have on all of your items and packaging materials. So very powerful that you can do that, but again, it can require a lot of setup and maintenance overall. So I'm going to go over real quick just a quick comparison of kind of what we went over of, hey, well, what are the different features? What can I do, right, within either Advanced Finance and Supply Chain, TMS, or with the ProShip service? So there's a whole bunch of different colors on this map, so I'm just going to kind of walk through it a little bit. So on the left, we have our different features. Okay, so in this case, can I do full truckload or truckload management with that feature? So if it's in blue, that means that it's native functionality within Dynamics 365. If it's clear, right? If it's not filled in, if it's white, then it means that that functionality does not exist in that specific column. So in the case of that first line, my full truckload management is going to be, hey, that's native functionality within D365. I don't need modifications for it, IP or a third party. So that's there. The ProShip service, like I said, that is primarily focused on less than truckload and partial type shipping. So that's what that truckload functionality really doesn't exist, or is it meant to be used for. So same with that next line, the small partial shipment management. Hey, advanced TMS does not really have that. The ProShip service, which is that purple dot, is that's what it's really made for, is to do that small partial shipment management and doing the advanced labeling and doing the scale integration and all of that. So as we just kind of go down that list, again, we have less than truckload management. Both of them can do it out of the box. That's generally not a problem, but we don't recommend doing too much LTL from a TMS perspective, just because that integration is not there. Integration to carrier API, and that's the big thing with that ProShip service versus TMS out of the box. They're both going to have some type of native label printing and label routing, and that's where we get to that next color. So anything that's in gold is an RSM Accelerator. So that's that we're getting that native label printing and label routing from ProShip with that RSM integration, right? So it's not the ProShip service itself isn't printing it, but the integration to D365 is printing it. Same with the rate shopping. And then as we get into the shipping label compliance, the international shipping documents, and that's all stuff that ProShip is going through and doing and generating. There's not a lot of the international shipping documents within D365 out of the box. And then these last three we're going to get into here a little bit more. These last couple is the multi-stop loads, an advanced labeling integration, so something to like a third-party labeling solution like a bartender that allows us to be a little bit more flexible, and having inbound and outbound orders on the same load. Is that I have is RSM IP if we're sticking with the D365 transportation management solution, or the ProShip service if I'm just looking at kind of that advanced labeling and flexibility there. So we're going to go and we're going to talk to some of the gaps and potential solutions. So in a couple of those gaps we've hit on a little bit already, we just want to dive a little bit deeper into them. So I'm going to turn it over to Connor.
Thanks, Nick. Just a quick refresher, I'm Connor Locker. I am one of the supply chain experts within D365 at RSM. So now we're going to talk about a few of the gaps and potential solutions that we see in common scenarios on our prospects and clients. So next slide. One of the main gaps that we see is on multi-stop loads. Currently, there's no real convenient way to support multi-destination loads without a third-party or a customization within D365. The fields are there, so there's a stop number on shipments as well as final destination fields. However, they require manual entry. So unless this is customized or integrated via a third party, it's very difficult to solution for multi-stop loads. As you see here on the bottom, we have a load stopping in multiple locations to eventually get to its final destination. The solution for this, the next slide here, could potentially be the advanced load building accelerator. As Nick talked about before, our RSM accelerators are development or RSM IP that has been completed to help you get closer to your final solution quicker. So it has a lot of the tie-ins that are necessary to get to a point where we can handle potentially multi-stop loading or other additional requirements. So advanced load building accelerator integrates inbound and outbound shipments from a diverse set of documents into an integrated managed platform to dynamically route and direct loads. So anyone who is familiar with D365 and the load planning workbench, this is basically the load planning workbench with additional features. So the key features that are involved in this are inbound and outbound load creation. We have route definition, so we determine which stops are going to be encompassed as part of a load. We have document management. So document management involves any type of outbound documentation, including your BOL, your load details, or any additional documentation that would be needed on the outbound side. We also have creation of pickups and drop-offs, so we can add pickups and drop-offs as part of loads, so a multi-stop load scenario that we talked about. And then we have updates to original documents. So again, common document that needs to go out in every outbound load is a bill of lading, BOL. Automatic updates will occur for that, as well as automatic updates to inventory statuses and locations for product that's within your facility. All right, let's get into our next gap here. So our next gap would be our carrier communication. So if you are an organization that has difficulty coordinating and building less than truckload or small parcel shipments due to the volume of orders that need to be maintained, that's a large gap that a lot of our clients that we speak with have seen. And then a gap could also be you need an integration to carrier services. Otherwise, you are having dual entry. So essentially, you're entering information within a FedEx web service, and then you have to enter the information again manually on the D365 or another ERP side on the inbound for that transaction to track that carrier service correctly. So that is a large gap. The solution for this gap, there's two potential solutions here. So on the left-hand side, we have ProShip and the RSM ProShip Accelerator. So that's the ProShip Service paired up with the RSM ProShip Accelerator. And the ProShip, to refresh on, is that third-party service which maintains the communication and reports needed for LTL and SPS shipments, and that will be the common carriers that you'd see in that would be FedEx, UPS, USPS, DHL, but again, it's over 80 carriers that are linked with ProShip. Another potential solution in this scenario would be small parcel shipping. So small parcel shipping is a new D365 functionality, and it is still in feature management, which means it's in the process of being released. But it sets up a framework within D365 to create that connection to carriers directly. So you can connect, as we spoke on multiple times, carriers like FedEx, UPS, USPS from D365 directly and get information back from that carrier's web service. The rate engine would also have to be developed and maintained within D365. And that would be small parcel shipping, which is somewhat of a trade-off when compared to ProShip, where ProShip is handling the rate engine on the ProShip service side. Okay, so let's talk about some of the ProShip gaps that are currently sitting out there today. So as we spoke on, there's 80 plus carriers, including the main ones. However, that does not include all carriers and carrier services. So if you are in a very niche market with your carriers, a ProShip potentially would not cover the scenario that you would need. Additional development is required to map non-standard fields to the integration. So if you have specialty requirements on your labels or specific fields that need to be mapped for your labels, we may have to look into additional development to build that into the ProShip mapping for the integration. There is not a direct tie from the carrier service or the carrier to the ERP. So currently, data transitions from D365 to ProShip to the carrier and carrier service, back to ProShip, and then to D365. So you see there's 5 separate touch points where small parcel shipping would be from D365 to the carrier service and back. So that's only 3 touch points. So there's a lot more points of potential error when involving ProShip. Okay, so as we've spoken on ProShip, a little bit about what it can do, and it works with D365, and we have an accelerator that connects to the ProShip service. So we wanted to walk through kind of how that accelerator works, and how that integration is built to help you handle your outbound parcel shipments. So let's move into the next slide here. So this slide shows a screenshot of your sales order creation. So we have a sales order that is created for a customer. A reservation is then created for the sales line. So your inventory is going to be reserved against a sales line. And then after that sales line has that, go back for a moment here. After that sales line has the reservation against it, the sales order could then be released to warehouse. At a point of being released to warehouse, you will have your shipment created, and it'll be posted onto a wave. So it will be pushed onto a wave. And then once that wave is created, once that is processed, then you will get your work created. So let's jump into the next one here. So after your work is created for the sales order, what you could do is your warehouse would pick this within the facility. And after this work is completed, your shipment would then be available to process through the ProShip service via the RSM ProShip Accelerator. What that looks like is shipment confirmation. So a lot of our clients have a manifestation where they're scanning in a shipment from that was created via the order. The shipment automatically pulls in information, like as we see on the screenshot here, we have the default shipper, which is set up as part of the ProShip service. And then we have our mode of delivery from the sales order line itself, or sales order header. And then the mode of delivery is going to be tied to a ProShip service. So in this scenario, it just looks like ground, but if you wanted to split your services out by carrier, you could potentially have a mode of delivery of FedEx ground, and it would tie directly to that service. But in this scenario that we're looking at here, it is just ground. So likely the client would want to rate shop against multiple carriers to determine which price is the best for them in this ground scenario. So to do that rate shopping, you'd hit the process button and you'd end up in this rate shopping interface. So within this rate shopping interface, it would pull up all of your prices for this specific shipment across the carriers that you set up as part of a service group. So we see here we have FedEx ground and UPS ground. The user would then have to select which service they're choosing, most likely based on price. And then after they selected that service, what would happen is you'd get a return tracking number as well as additional details for that shipment itself. So let's dive into the next slide. Yeah, you would also get a label. So we spoke a little bit about label creation and flexible label generation. So these labels that are returned are directly from ProShip itself. So ProShip service receives images of the labels directly from the carrier, and these labels are all approved by FedEx, UPS, USPS, or any carriers that are linked to ProShip itself. And all that means is essentially you don't have to go through an additional approval process, and these labels are already compliant. So these labels are received from ProShip. They are received back in to D365 and can then be sent out to whatever printers needed on the floor. And this can be done via ZPL or another type of printer integration dependent on your specific scenario. Okay, so if you process the shipment through ProShip and say, hey, you potentially made a mistake on the carrier that you selected or the carrier service that you selected, say you wanted to select FedEx ground, you accidentally chose UPS ground. So how you could handle this is there's a shipment void. So the shipment void process, if after you void, it makes the shipment then available for editing and reprocessing. So once you would void, it would send a void message to a carrier. So in our scenario that I just spoke on, a UPS would get a void message, which would cancel the shipment in UPS systems. We could then rate shop this shipment again, choose FedEx ground. After choosing FedEx ground, we would then receive the labels back for the correct carrier service, and would be able to print those labels out and put them on our parcel. Okay, so then after we're done with our shipment processing and handling, potentially from a manifestation, and it goes through ProShip, we do receive all of this information back within the D365, and it's stored within the shipment management table. So this includes your customer information, your tracking number, your base prices, any special discounting that you got from the carrier itself based on your negotiated rates. It would contain some of the shipment content. So if you had a container, it would have the contents of that container listed at the bottom here. So anything related to that shipment that just connected to that carrier and has been processed will be on this form. And this form has a direct link from the sales order form. You can review the ProShip information for all of the shipments on a specific sales order. So there is a link between sales order and tracking number. Okay, so another one of our potential solutions that was spoke on above is ProShip and the RSM Accelerator, or if the D365 TMS does not fit your specific needs, we recommend looking out for a third party. So one of our integration stories here is with BlueJay. So we have a BlueJay story and integration that we built on a previous client where they were process manufacturing client that had heavy B2B scenarios with many multi-stop load requirements. So say you have a customer along the lines of Walmart and they require a drop off at multiple distribution centers and then a final distribution center. That was a scenario that we saw commonly on this client. They had a single load that could have up to 60 stops. So that the 60 stop loads were ones that we saw that were floor stacked in that specific scenario, but multiple other types of loads as well had a large number of stops within the load. They had a mix of their own fleet as well as third-party carriers that would bid against these shipments within BlueJay. BlueJay would receive the order information from D365 through order confirmation. And this included updates as well. So if you changed a sales order or a transfer order within D365, an order confirmation would then have to occur again to send that update back to BlueJay. And then the order information would be updated within BlueJay itself. This information included the customer, order number, total number of pallets, as well as destination. After all this information was received within BlueJay, the orders would be routed within a 30 pallet load within BlueJay. These orders would then be either chosen by or selected for within the own fleet, or they would bid this out to other carriers on BlueJay to determine who was going to be the shipping carrier for this specific load. Once this was confirmed in BlueJay of who won the bid and who will be carrying this load, we have the load information sent back to D365, which would include the stop number for each individual shipment on the load. These loads would then be picked by stop number based off of D365 work templates. So the last stop is going to be loaded first. So this is also Phyla. So that is our specific BlueJay scenario. If you have any other questions about this integration, please feel free to ask them. All right, so we have some of our closing remarks here. We've walked through ProShip, we've walked through RSM accelerators, D365 TMS. So what we wanted to do as part of these closing remarks is bring back up this comparison form. So on this comparison form, you can see some of the scenarios that we talked about, multi-stop loads, and how they are handled within D365 TMS with the potential for the advanced load building accelerator to come into play. But it's not covered by ProShip Service. We covered a bunch of these details, so this was just a kind of a reference to say, hey, here's this comparison slide again, based off all the information that we've given out as part of this presentation. You can now kind of understand how to compare these different services as well as scenarios better. Okay, so solution summary. So within the B2C or LTL or heavy LTL space or small parcel shipment space, where you need an integration directly to a carrier, we recommend using ProShip as well as RSM's ProShip Accelerator. A B2B focused organization with the distribution framework where it's mainly full truckloads, we recommend using D365 TMS. And then a hybrid where you have very specific scenarios involved with your shipments that need multi-stop routing, label requirements, specialty documentation. We recommend looking into the RSM Advanced Load Building Accelerator or a third-party solution, which we have used BlueJ a lot in the past as a TMS system. So next, I'm gonna pass it off to Nick here to add some additional closing remarks.
Yeah, so just a couple closing comments here. So like Connor said, we kind of went over D365 transportation management. Again, just to provide a way to plan, organize, track, and inbound and outbound orders. It's going to primarily work best with full truckload orders or full truckload shipments. The downside is that, hey, unless you custom build a bunch of integrations, there is a lot of manual setup and maintenance up front. So depending on what your volume is, it may not make sense. We went over ProShip and RSM's integration accelerator to ProShip. Like Connor said, a good solution for LTL courier shipments. Integrating that rate shopping, confirmations, label printing really cuts down on a lot of that dual entry or manual entry into those into each of those courier systems. So it really makes sense, especially if you're using multiple couriers. I said if you're using both USPS and FedEx and UPS, as it makes it so everything's in one spot. Those third-party solutions like a BlueJ is going to, again, integrate well with Dynamics 365. If we have a large volume of shipments, especially if hey, some of them are going to be LTL shipments, some of them are going to be full truckload, or I just have a lot of custom requirements like those large manual or multi-stop routes like Connor was mentioning, where that client had routes that would get up to 60 stops long. And then just from again, we didn't touch on it much in this webinar. Director, there'll be a webinar that is getting posted up on our blog that we did last month on landed cost. That will give a little bit more detail on that landed cost module and different ways of really tracking inbound and other customs cost and being able to analyze those. But landed cost again can be used to further enhance tracking of inbound material, can also go through and take ownership at different points. So that's a common issue, especially if you are importing material from other countries. So next steps here, reach out to any of your RSM D365 contacts if you have any questions or want to move forward on anything. We have some blogs out there on landed cost. It's a series that was going to be consistently posting some more articles on there, so we just have a link in there. And I believe Lacey's, if she hasn't already, going to be throwing that into the Q&A portion as an announcement. Or as I said, you can reach out again if you just have questions on overall what different transportation management solutions are out there and how you can integrate them into your company. Please reach out to our D365 industrials team. So this team specializes in manufacturing, energy, anything that's kind of touches kind of that industrial products and manufacturing area. And we'd be happy to answer any of your questions. So with that, I will go ahead and open it up to questions and let Lacey take over from there.
Yep, so a few questions came in. The first is, does the ProShip integration handle third-party and consignee shipments as well?
Yeah, so the ProShip Accelerator and ProShip Service does handle third-party and consignee shipment types as well. That's defined in D365 with the delivery terms. So based off of how you are delivering that product, you can use third-party as well as consignee services as long as they are connected to your specific carrier account, whether it be FedEx, UPS, USPS, whatever carrier you are using.
Great question. Any other questions?
Another question. Yep,
Sorry.
that came through. Can I use transportation management to plan for internal transfers between facilities?
Yep. So you can use transportation management to put and plan loads with transfer order lines on those loads. So you can put, again, sales orders, transfer orders on those. The main downside to doing that is you can just plan them and ship them, so they'll show up on a bill of lading. But there's no way out of the box in D365 just with transportation management to allocate or assign any costs to those specific items. So if we're going through and doing a costing methodology like a FIFO, it does make it so you can't, there's no out of the box way to say, hey, the shipping cost on this should be allocated to this transfer order of $200 and allocate that down to put that into my inventory costs. The landed cost module is something that you can look at for this. It is just separate currently from the transportation management module.
All right. Thank you. Do the presenters have any closing comments?
I'll just say, please do not hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. I said, whether to your RSM contacts or to our D365 industrials team. Lacey has put that email address in the chat, so you can see that. This will also be going up on our blog site for future viewing also.
And that concludes today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions or want to reach out to us, please fill out our contact form, which you can locate in the chat box. As a reminder that this webinar will be posted on our technology blog soon for viewing, or if you would like to send it to someone who you think would benefit from today's session. Have a great day.